Tom, what are you going through?
Hell. It's just devastating, but yeah, just trying to push on as much as possible.
What's keeping you going?
Just hope somebody saw something, or she just walked through the door.
Do you still think that'll could happen today?
I have to. Yeah.
Jill was attacked 400 meters from her home after 1:30 a.m. on the morning of September 22, 2012. She went missing after a night out with friends in Brunswick, a suburb of Melbourne. The 29-year-old had been out with co-workers celebrating a birthday at an inner Melbourne venue, and declined the offer of an escort home given it was no more than a 10-minute walk. Despite a widespread social media campaign to locate her body was found several days later in a shallow grave. The man who murdered her was a convicted sex offender who was out on parole when he killed her. He should never have been released. 2 days after the discovery of her body in a shallow grave in Gisborne South, 30,000 people marched down Sydney Road in her memory. By June 2013, Victorian parole law had been overhauled, a change that would form part of Jill's tragic legacy. Welcome to Insight Wave, the channel that delves into both solved and unsolved cases from around the world. If you haven't already, please take a moment to like and subscribe to stay up to date with the latest crime stories delivered straight to your inbox. It was the 21st of September, 2012, a Friday, when 29-year-old Jill Meagher was out with her colleagues in Melbourne, Australia. She was a unit coordinator at the Australian Broadcasting Corporation, enjoying a celebration for a colleague's birthday. Jill and her husband, Tom Meagher, had moved to Australia from Dublin, Ireland, in 2009, seeking a better life. Despite her family living in Perth, they both found joy in their life in Melbourne. The early hours of the following Saturday saw Tom waking before 4 a.m., alarmed that Jill hadn't returned home. He attempted to contact her and even reached out to her friends, but nobody knew her whereabouts. Worried, he informed the authorities about her disappearance. Authorities scrutinized Jill's movements, finding that she left the party with 3 colleagues before visiting a couple of pubs. Declining an offer to be walked home, she embarked on a short walk alone. While initially under suspicion, Tom was swiftly cleared as a suspect. Sergeant Butler emphasized the significance of this clearance, stating, "Excluding somebody is as important as finding the actual killer." On the morning of Sunday, September 23, 2012, the positioning of Mr. Meagher's and Jill's phones played a crucial role in confirming Tom's innocence. Additionally, CCTV footage captured Jill walking with a man. As the news that she had gone missing started to circulate, her colleagues at ABC took to Twitter to spread the message. A Facebook page called "Help Find Jill Meagher" was set up on September 23, and a poster campaign was launched to circulate as many images of her as possible. The scale of the search and media interest was huge. Within just 5 days of the Facebook page being launched, it had received over 100,000 likes. As the search continued on September 24, an important discovery was made. In a laneway near Hope Street, Jill's bag was found. Hope Street was not far from where she lived with her husband. Following this discovery, the police made an announcement that so many people had been dreading, they were handing the case over to the homicide squad. The following day, officers had yet another breakthrough. An employee at the Duchess's Boutique, a bridal shop on Sydney Road where Jill had been out with friends, handed in CCTV footage from their shop, which was then released to the public by the Victoria Police. The recording was limited as it was recorded through the shop window, but it showed a man in a blue hoodie walking around outside the shop. Approximately 4 minutes later, around 1:42 a.m., Jill can be seen on the footage talking to him. She seems to be showing her mobile phone. This was the last known sighting of Jill Meagher. Following the uncovering of the CCTV, the police focused their attention on finding the man in the blue hoodie.
Their suspicion that she may have been abducted.
That's right. They're particularly interested in talking to the man in a blue hoodie, jeans and sneakers who was seen doubling back across that CCTV footage. He's described as being in around his 30s, but there's quite good vision there, and police are hoping that anyone who knows him or the man himself will come forward. They say because of this CCTV footage, they're moving more and more towards the likelihood that she was abducted.
The next thing the police checked was Jill's phone records and cell phone pings. They could see it was traveling down the freeway on the night she disappeared, indicating that she would have been traveling by car. After checking the license plates of the cars caught on cameras, the police came to a horrifying realization. Her phone was moving at the same time and at the same location as the car registered to a well-known and dangerous sex offender, a man who looked very similar to the man seen wearing blue in the CCTV footage. The police acted swiftly and arrested the man they believed was seen on the CCTV footage. His name was Adrian Ernest Bailey.
After she vanished, following a night out with friends, police arrested a man. Joining us now from outside the St Kilda Road Police Headquarters after a police briefing a few minutes ago is our reporter, Hamish Fitzsimmons. Hamish, you've just literally come from that briefing. What are police saying, or what are they able to say?
Tony, I have the worst possible news. Police say they expect to charge the man they've arrested with the rape and murder of Jill Meagher. They gave what the senior investigating officer said was an unprecedented but very off-the-record media briefing because he wanted to thank the media for its cooperation and ask for some sensitivity regarding this matter. Of course, Jill was...
As the evidence against Adrian began to mount, he confessed. Bailey insisted he had argued with his girlfriend while in the city on the night Jill went missing, then spent 2 hours looking for her, before eventually going home. "I'm worried about women. Women shouldn't walk around on their own," veteran homicide detective Ron Iddles, who listened to the interview over the phone, remembered Bailey saying. As Sergeant Rowe asked Bailey about the photo of his car and the whereabouts of his phone, the killer's confidence began to erode. "I can't explain it," became his go-to answer. "There's a definite point in the interview where I could see his attitude, his demeanor, even his complexion change," Sergeant Rowe said. "He became rattled. At one point in time he became angry." When asked about the SIM card, Bailey said, "I don't want to explain it." He sat back on his chair, he paused and he slightly shook his head, Sergeant Rowe said. Before too long, Bailey admitted he was responsible, but did not divulge how he had committed the murder. He told police that he was on the same street as Jill. He saw her around 1:30 a.m. Police knew from Jill's records that that was around the time she was on the phone to her brother Michael McKeon. She called him as their father had recently had a stroke and she was worried about his health and was upset on the call. When the call ended, Adrian approached Jill. He walked next to her along Sydney Road. Jill turned off Sydney Road at Hope Street. Adrian attacked her at the first laneway off Hope Street. He became enraged when she rejected his advances. He touched her bottom and tried to kiss her and Jill stepped back and slapped him across the face. Adrian raped Jill in the laneway. She told him to stop and that she would tell the police. Adrian strangled her to death. He left her body lying in the laneway while he returned home to Coburg to get his car and a shovel. He returned to the laneway at 4:22 a.m. and put Jill's body in the car and drove to Gisborne South in Victoria, about 45 kilometers away, dug a shallow grave and buried Jill there. Adrian showed police where he buried Jill. Dr. Matthew Lynch, a forensic pathologist, conducted a post-mortem examination on Jill's body. He determined her cause of death as compression of the neck. There were bruises and lacerations on her body that were consistent with an attack and rape. At his sentencing hearing, the court heard that after he raped and killed Jill, Adrian sat down and began crying and panicking. But those tears were for himself. He did not want to return to prison. Judge Jeffrey Nettle said that Jill had been subjected to a savage and degrading assault. This was a woman who was unknown to you, who you dragged off the street as she was going about her peaceful business. As a strong man, you physically dominated her and subjected her to a savage and degrading rape. Adrian was sentenced to life in prison, with a 35-year non-parole period, for the rape and murder of Jill Meagher. He was found guilty in May 2015 of 3 more violent rapes and was sentenced to 18 years in prison for those crimes. At the time of Jill's murder, Adrian was on parole for raping 5 women in the Bayside suburb of Elwood in 2002. Over a 23-year period, 11 years of which he spent in prison, he was found guilty of 20 rapes. Adrian committed his first known rape when he was just 18 years old. He raped a 16-year-old girl in his house. He raped 2 other women within a year and was sentenced to 5 years in prison but served only 2 years. When he was released from prison, he raped 5 women in Elwood. They were working as prostitutes and he attacked them in the same way. He parked his car close to a wall behind a row of shops so they could not open the door to escape. They had no way out. After those attacks, he was sentenced to 11 years in prison for 16 counts of rape against 5 women but was released after serving 7 years. Before he murdered Jill, he attacked a man in Geelong. The attack was so vicious that he broke the man's jaw and knocked him unconscious. He was sentenced to 3 months in prison but he appealed it, which meant his parole was not revoked, which was why he was free to walk the streets. His parole should have been revoked as he had breached it, but the appeal stopped that process taking place. Coroner Ian Gray found that Jill's death had been preventable. A more rigorous, risk-averse approach by Community Correctional Services, CCS, and the Adult Parole Board, APB, would have led to a cancellation of Bailey's parole. The approach taken is difficult to understand. It did not bring dangerous and high-risk parolees immediately to account. The coroner noted Victoria's parole system had been amended since Jill's murder, and had it been changed when Adrian was charged with the Geelong assault, his parole probably would have been cancelled automatically when he was convicted of that offence. Jill's husband Tom Meagher said, "I think of the waste of a brilliant mind and a beautiful soul at the hands of a grotesque and soulless human being." 3 days after Bailey was charged, 30,000 people staged a now iconic march down Sydney Road in Brunswick, to remember Jill and to reclaim the night. The emotional toll was so great for some close to the case that 2 forensic investigators, who attended the scene of Jill's body, never came back to work. Sergeant Iddles said his former colleagues, Sergeant Butler and Sergeant Rowe, both struggled after the investigation, with Rowe eventually deciding to leave the homicide squad. The investigation is obviously very intense. "For me personally, I go home at night and I cry," Sergeant Iddles said.